Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 21st episode of Kouryer podcast. Today, I'm joined with Mr. Martin Manners. He's a professional. He's professionalizing in 3D art from Netherlands. And with that out of the way, give us a little introduction on how he got into visual arts and design.
Hi. So thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on your podcast. So I started doing 3D around about like a year and a half ago, and before that I was very actively doing photography. Like I did that for around 15 years, but in the last 2 or 3 years. I wasn't getting any creative energy from it anymore. So I kind of gave up on photography, just, I didn't drop it, but I put down the camera, never touched it again. But still there was this like creative urge, like I wanted to create stuff. And then I started working for Wacom, the Japanese pen tablet company. And because of my work, I got to visit a lot of really interesting festivals, one of them being Playgrounds Festival, where I got, that was the first time for me that I got to see concept artists present their work and their workflow. And when I was watching those guys, I was like completely blown away. Like my creative brain started, partying and say, I told myself, this is insane. Like I've never heard of anything around 3D or CG. And just listening to those guys and watching them create something from nothing, so starting with a blank screen, really, really intrigued me. So that's when I decided to install Cinema 4D, and it all started from there.
All right, pretty interesting. We're going to get to the Wacom part later. Actually, that's going to be a lot of interesting things we're going to learn from that experience. And next question, were you originally studying art and design, or you were pursuing another career path?
No, I've never done anything around art. So my whole professional life, I'm 44 years old now, and I've always done commercial jobs, like in sales. Right now I'm in sales, and my previous job was at Nikon, the camera brand, where I was account manager as well, so doing sales. And creativity has always been like a passion, a hobby or a passion for me, because before I was doing photography, I was producing dance music. I released a couple of tracks, but that kind of died, and I rolled into photography that way.
All right, and the next question is, what is your main branch of design that you're focusing on right now? And tell us about your experience from the start of it until now.
Right. So when I decided I wanted to do something with CG, I would just go without even owning a Cinema 4D license or having anything installed on my computer. I was just looking at tutorials in general. I would just go to YouTube, type in CG environment or CG or 3D tutorial, something like that. And I watched hundreds and hundreds of tutorials without doing anything, just inhaling inspiration and looking at what people use, how they, what their techniques were. And then I found out that most of the things I liked could be described as concept art. So just creating a story in a still is how I like to describe it. And the more tutorials I was watching, I figured out that most of the stuff I really liked was done in Cinema 4D using Octane render. So after like 6 months of pretty much non-stop looking at tutorials, I decided to go for Cinema 4D and Octane. I guess, if I want to label it, I would say I'm doing concept art. But on the other hand, I don't really care what it's labeled as. I just create stuff that I think looks cool, and I post it, and it's really nice to see that there's people out there that apparently are enjoying what I'm doing. But initially it's to create stuff I like to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's basically the whole root and I think personally that should be like the base of pursuing of any hobby or skill.
Yeah,
Like, that you should first personally be, interested into it, like actually interested into it, not because of like exterior motives or other stuff.
true.
Like, and when you do that, you're kind of letting your whole facets of creative juices flow, and it just produces real authentic work without you even noticing. And that's what's attractive to people usually.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely,
so
absolutely.
in a nutshell, try to just be yourself, and you you know you
Yeah.
don't know what people might like.
Well, exactly. And for me, I always say it's kind of like my yoga, getting away from the crazy world that we find ourselves in right now, just creating my own little worlds where astronauts live or where an alien guy lives. And for some reason, sometimes people ask me, where do you get your inspiration from? And, honestly, I watch Netflix series and I watch movies and sometimes read a book. But for some reason, when I open Cinema 4D, I basically get inspired by the process of just creating a landscape from nothing, and then when I'm walking, so to say, that landscape, I just see a camera angle where I think, oh, that's cool. Maybe a house lives here, or it needs some trees, and I just start building and building and building. And like I said, constantly being inspired by what's happening in front of me on my screen.
All right, next question. How does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a design project?
Yeah, that it kind of depends. So I've started on a series earlier this year, like on January 1st, on a series of 365 black and white renders. Sometimes I start really from scratch, like there's nothing, and I just start building a road because I know I want like a city themed project, or I start sculpting a landscape and scattering some vegetations and trees on it, and just take it from there. But sometimes I open an old project which I haven't touched in like 6 months. I open it and get inspired by that. Just go, right, okay, so I finished it 6 months ago with a house and a boat and some water, and I just get rid of all the details. Just keep just the landscape, and find a different camera angle, put in other clouds or another sun direction, other assets, and take it from there. So it kind of depends on my mood, I guess, what the process is. But it's always, I always want to like create a visual story within the images I create. So I just keep going with a image until I find it's telling the story I was getting inspired to tell.
All right, and actually, in this part of the podcast, so I wanted to talk. I want to discuss some of the subjects of your artworks. Like, of course, you already mentioned that aliens and like astronauts are one of the, like, basically astronauts. People in spacesuits. If people go check your page right now on Instagram, they will see a lot of actually artworks with astronauts in it. And I would like to, know what's the idea behind it. Why astronauts exactly?
Okay. Why astronauts? Yeah, the funny thing is, astronauts is like a common theme in at least the Octane render community, and I think even in the current 3D community. And someone explained to me why that is, because I just thought they looked cool and they're easy to use to tell a story. But someone recently explained, well, the reason why they're so popular is they don't have fur, they don't have hair, so they're pretty easy to use. Like, you can pose them in different poses, and you don't have to worry about fur or hair, which is normally in CG very hard to master. But for me, it started with with a render challenge by Fabio Palvelli and Jason Bergeron from D2 conferences. They did like these bi-weekly render challenges, and one of them was a challenge by Domenico D'Alissa. He's a great artist, and he offered everyone that wanted to join in on the challenge a free model of an astronaut. So I was like, "Ooh, free astronaut! Who doesn't want that?" And then a while later, I met Thomas Berger, I think is his last name, Polygon Yogurt, amazing guy. And he was working on a series of stills around a fat astronaut, like a really fat guy in a spacesuit. And we got talking because I really loved what he was doing with that character. And so we started talking and decided to start working on that series together to extend it a little bit and to make it more into like a storyline. So when I started working on his astronaut model, for some reason I got inspired to give that astronaut model have him hold a sign. Like there's this Instagram page called Dude with Sign, and he does like a daily post of himself in the streets holding a cardboard sign with a text on it, usually pretty funny text. So basically I just copied the idea of someone holding a cardboard sign with a funny text. But in this case, it was an astronaut. So I think a lot of people from at least the Octane community find that pretty funny because, like I said, astronauts and Octane go hand in hand. So yeah, that's the story behind astronauts.
All right, sounds awesome.
I hope I don't answer too long.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Actually, you can go as much in detail as possible.
Okay.
Like, there's no time limit. Like,
Cool.
actually, kind of, I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here, but actually, the longest podcast we had was like I think 10 months ago, and it was a podcast about architecture, and it lasted about like I think 90 minutes or something.
Oh wow.
And like it was so fluid, because it was so much fluid conversations, and we just bounced off ideas of each other, and just be completely comfortable,
Okay.
just say anything as much as you want.
Cool.
Let's leave it there. All right. Next question: who are your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most in your works?
So yeah, as I said before, I learned the tools Cinema 4D and Octane by watching YouTube tutorials, and there's a couple of guys that offer like super high quality and very in-depth tutorials on the subject, and one of them is Josh Pierce. Josh is he's responsible for me getting at least a little bit comfortable creating forest environments, like nature environments in CG. And the other one is David Ariev. Like he's known as Octane Jesus, and I think he deserves that name because he's like very, very deep inside Octane, and he has a way of sharing his knowledge in a super fun and engaging way. So from a technical perspective, definitely those two guys have been a massive influence. There's many guys out there that inspire me, like Cornelius Damrich. I don't know if you can ever have him on your podcast, but that would be very interesting for you because when you compare it to like your average CG artist, they try always to work as fast as possible, right? There's even guys out there that are doing daily renders, like people like fuck. I hope you can cut the out. Like Beeple and the Dizzy Viper, they're doing like daily renders, which I think is very, very impressive. Like being able to push out a render every day. Am I still there? Yeah. Sorry, my computer went to sleep. So Cornelius Damrich, he takes anywhere between 2 months and a year to create his renders, and they're so impressive to look at from lighting to texturing to the details. It's incredible. I can enjoy both a lot. I also take inspiration from photographers. Like I always forget this guy's name. He's like a true hero. His name is. I'm going to come up with it in 10 seconds.
No problem. You can say later if you want. If it comes back.
Let me quickly open up my.
All right, no problem. No problem. Take your time.
Oh, this is so bad that I don't know his name. And the thing is, I even met the guy a couple of years ago. Yeah, I think you should pause.
No problem, no problem. We can come back to it later.
Yeah, let's come back to it later. But the thing is, I also get inspiration from photographers and movies and series. Like I'm a sucker for lighting and composition, basically. Like I can get really happy when I see certain lighting or certain way of compositing images.
Well, actually, what you say actually makes total sense, because actually, I'm gonna open up the Instagram page of my podcast, and I'm gonna tell you something actually interesting. Mm-hmm. So right now we're on episode 21, and like, let's see, episode 18, episode 17, 16, 14, like they were all 3D artists. Like mostly I've interviewed 3D artists, mm-hmm. Like lately, and every single one of them said that. The thing that always inspires them to do works or come up with ideas is like studying different art forms, photography. Yeah. Especially one of the things that every one of them said is studying stills from movies and series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually really interesting to me. It could also apply to other art forms as well, not just 3D art. But let's just move on to the next question. What is the main subject of your artworks and what made them interesting to you? We know that like a major part of it has been answered by now. Like, of course, we talked about the astronauts in detail, but I was wondering if there was anything else that's, might be interesting to you.
Well, what I'm noticing when I started doing the black and white renders, which I'm really starting to like, or I like it already, but it's becoming like to a point where I'm almost thinking that I will never do colored renders again, because doing black and white renders for some reason is a different experience and one I really enjoy. And what I'm noticing is that it works really well if I use 3D models of well-known statues. Like if you look at my Instagram page, the past couple of posts have been around those black and white renders, and I'm using statues there, which are actually models that you can download to 3D print. So there's a website where you can download them for printing them with a 3D printer. I use them in my CG work, and for some reason, using a statue really helps create a visual story really quick, which is not surprising because the original sculptor of that statue, of course, was trying to tell a visual story. That for some reason it's really interesting and helpful using statues. So I think that's right now that is the the running thing in my CG work.
All right, and how to simplify the start of the learning process when it comes to 3D art, in your opinion?
The start of the
learning process.
To simplify. So I would, when I started, I would just spend every spare second of my life, because, I have a job and I have a family. And whenever I had some spare time, I would use that inside Cinema 4D and watching tutorials. So just breathing in information and translating it into your own skill set. So try to create stuff, and you're not going to create masterpieces every single time. Like there would be weeks where I wouldn't get any render out because I didn't think the things I was doing were worth rendering. But still, even if you're not creating a masterpiece, you're still practicing your brain and practicing your skill of doing CG, right? Placing lights, working on textures, working on composition, camera angle. Every second you spend doing 3D is developing your skill. And again, it doesn't have to work towards a result every single time, is what I feel. As long as you're just spending time doing it.
All right, makes sense. And any advice and tips for a good portfolio and resume for artists?
I don't think I understand the question.
All right, I'm gonna repeat it again and try to explain it more. Any advice and tips for a good portfolio and resume for artists? Like basically, if someone's an up-and-coming artist or a 3D artist, how should they design their portfolios and resumes to get hired either by clients or agencies?
Okay. Well, I don't think I'm the right person to ask this because I'm still a beginner myself. Like I started a year and a half ago. I don't even have the intention to ever do this professionally. But if you look at my Instagram, what I'm doing is I'm only posting the stuff that I'm really, really, really satisfied with. So I will never post something that I personally don't really like or have second thoughts about. So that would be the only advice I can give. Sorry, let me just close Teams. I don't know if you're hearing this, but every time I get a message...
No, it's fine. It's fine, yeah.
Oh, I have the name of the photographer, by the way.
Oh, who is he?
So there's this photographer called Gregory Shit. Damn, Teams. Are you hearing those beeps?
It's fine. Yes, okay. I can hear.
So there's a photographer called Gregory Crutzen, and that guy for me creates just insanely beautiful images. I know he shoots analog, like with the old school wet plate techniques, and he just builds almost complete Hollywood sets for every image that he shoots. And every image that he ever created is such a source of inspiration for me, from lighting to composition to the way he places seemingly random objects in his scene, but then when you hear him talk about the images, they all interconnect to the bigger story within the image. So that's super, super inspiring to me.
All right, and what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? What kind of project is it? Like, of course, if there's something that you've contracted or there's some NDAs and contracts, you can talk about it, it's fine. But if you can't talk about it, what kind of project are you working on right now?
Yeah, so I just finished... It's not really something I'm producing, but I was very lucky to be one of the QA testers for David Ariev's new Lights Camera Render course. I just finished testing the final episode yesterday, so that was such a massive learning experience for me, and a lot of fun as well. But from a render perspective, I'm working on that 365 black and white renders, which I'm hoping to finish end of this year. But I'm already a little bit behind because normally I should have been at around 29 or 30 renders, but I'm only at like 14. So I'm hoping to catch up soon. And what I will be starting soon is working on that series together with Polygon Yogurt with Thomas around the fat astronaut. So I'm planning to going to Berlin soon to meet Thomas and just spend a couple of days writing like a storyline and giving him some personality before we start creating renders.
All right, and what area beside the area you're working on right now are you interested to explore and learn? Like, what I mean by that is like, let's say right now, hypothetically, you got $1 million right now in a bank, and which made you basically worry less about like some of the other aspect of your life. So it basically makes you have so much more free time, I assume.
Yeah.
All right. Now, in that free time, what would you be focusing on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that would be, I would learn more about animation. Like when I was doing photography, like in the final years of my photography, I was using Adobe After Effects to try and put a little bit of movement or motion in my still images. And now with CG, I've spent the last year and a half just creating stills, where I think the power of Cinema 4D would be to create animation. And I like I said, I recently did a course where animation was like the end goal, and I did end up spending some time doing animation because of the course. And to be completely fair, I didn't really enjoy the process because it's just so much more time consuming, and I'm an impatient guy by nature, so I was just having a hard time staying focused on, getting that one camera move just right, or going back and hand posing a character, because when I hit the final render and I let my computer render for overnight, and then the next day I would find out that like this one finger was moving in the wrong direction, a finger of a character, that just started to annoy me. But if I get $1 million in my bank account today, I don't have to worry about anything, then I think I would definitely dive into animation more, because I still think it would be super cool to tell like a visual story using moving images rather than right now I'm just making stills.
All right, and with that out of the way, I think we've reached the conclusion of our podcast. And with everything that's been said and done in this episode, to conclude everything we discussed, give us a roadmap for someone who is zero in visual arts and wants to get to the place you are in terms of skill set when it comes to 3D art, like where to start, tools, software, preferred books, everything, like from zero to where you are.
All right.
Give us a roadmap.
Well, I would suggest following what I followed, because for me it's a very natural. It's been a very natural road without any pressure. I've never put any pressure on myself. So as I said, I started with, without even installing software, just look at tutorials. Like the amount of quality free tutorials on YouTube is just insane, and I'm still shocked by the amount of CG artists, like incredible CG artists that just share their knowledge for free out there. They spend time recording a tutorial, uploading it to YouTube, and I've gained so much information from just following step by step those tutorials. So just first start watch them, then install the software and do like a step by step follow of what the guy doing the tutorial is telling you. So if the guy tells you in this field you type in 45.6, then I would just hit pause, go to that field, type in 45.6 and see what happens. And then I would also put in 90 to see what happens, if I steer a little bit away from what he's telling me. So just to get a feel of what certain tools in certain software does. And then the other advice I would have is just, if you like what you're doing, like with me, I don't even call it a hobby CG. For me, it's like my passion, and I'm trying to spend as much time as I can inside Cinema 4D. Like, sometimes I wake up at 5 a.m. just because my body says, hey, the birds are out, let's start the day. And then my family will be asleep for at least another 3 to 4 hours. So I just boot up my system, I open Cinema 4D, and I either work on a project I'm working on, or I open an old scene file and continue working on it, or I look on YouTube for new tutorials which I didn't follow before. And you know, whichever road I choose that morning, it always makes me a better person CG wise. You know, there's always stuff I'm learning just by spending time doing CG.
All right, there we have it, folks. And I think we reached the end of the episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people contact you if they wanted to ask a question or just, you know?
Yeah, feel free to slide into my DMs, I think is the current way of saying it. So
Yes.
check my Instagram page, and I'm always open also to, become contacts on Facebook. So whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I'll definitely put the Instagram caption, both tag you on the posts and also in the caption, so they won't miss it. And just one tiny question: what are your opinions on Blender compared to Cinema 4D?
I started using Cinema 4D, and I haven't used anything else. All I can say is that I'm seeing a lot of people, at least jumping into Cinema 4D. Jumping into Blender. Not instead of their current software, but as an addition, or at least to try it out. And from what I've been seeing is that it's a very, very impressive piece of software, very versatile. For me, there's no reason right now to jump into Blender, because I think I've only really just touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Cinema 4D. I think there's so much stuff I need to discover and learn inside Cinema 4D. But who knows? Like in the future, I will probably be checking it out. Same goes for Unreal Engine. Like there's so many people diving in or getting their feet wet in Unreal Engine. And from what I've been seeing, it's incredibly powerful and incredibly easy once you decide to learn how to use it. So yeah, who knows? But for now, it's Cinema 4D and Octane, and who knows what happens in the future.
All right, thanks a lot for joining us. Have a good day, everyone. See you in the next
Thanks
episode.
for having
Bye. Sure, my pleasure.